And if you could create a little distance, 10, 20, 30 feet from somebody, well, then you are out of reach of that weapon. You could secure your safety simply by retreating a bit. And in that context, requiring a legal duty to retreat before you could kill someone kind of makes sense. You have a safe option other than having to take someone else's life. That all changes, of course, if everyone's carrying around a gun, because you're not going to retreat at 1,000 feet per second from someone's 9mm pistol. So it's really unique to the American experience that we say, hey, we recognize we're America. We all have guns. And if someone's threatening you with a projectile weapon that can fire hot pieces of lead at 1,000 feet per second, we're not going to tell you got to try to jog away before you can defend yourself against that threat.
It's the more I listen to conversations on this, talk about this, the more firmly I'm convinced people need to study not just history, but I'm sad at how little basic understanding of civics, and not even just the judicial system, but just our government as a whole, how it works. It seems like if people had a better understanding of it, maybe they would be less prone to put themselves into that system, into the judicial system, with maybe acting out when they could have got away. Or it's kind of a simple shooting problem. You've got this guy a couple feet away from you. You're trapped in a vehicle. Let's talk about that a little bit from a like a technical standpoint. You got a client calling you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Well, I mean, how can I put it? I was going to say it's not a complicated shooting problem. It's not a complicated shooting problem if you're competent. It's not complicated. If you're just a guy who got a concealed carry permit and got a gun and stuck it on his belt, holding it in his lap, and you've never fired more than 50 rounds through that gun, we talk about missing. I mean, I've been at like steel matches. I don't know how many people have shot steel matches, but there's a series like 5 or 6 courses of fire. You have to shoot 5 steel plates. Some of these steel plates are huge. They're like 2 foot by 3 foot. Maybe they're bigger than that. And they're only a few feet away. And I see people miss those things all the time. It's like, how could you possibly miss that giant piece of steel right in front of you? But when you're trying to go quick under pressure, you don't want to embarrass yourself in front of your friends, all that kind of stuff, misses can happen. Shooting handguns is not complicated, but we make it difficult because we mess up the shot, right? Fundamentally, it's very straightforward. You align the sights on the target, you depress the trigger without changing the sight alignment, you'll hit. You can do that holding the gun upside down. You could do that laying on your back. You could do that suspended from a rope. Doesn't matter. As long as you do those 2 things, you're highly likely to hit the target. Yet we miss all the time. Trained police officers, I think, hit maybe 30% of the shots they fire actually hit the intended target. So,
and this isn't violence that we're talking about.
This is
You're
violence.
Talking about
right, the police, right,
yeah.
in use of force events, right? Not hopefully not at the range. That would be that would be horrific at the range. Hopefully they're doing better than that when they qualify. But yeah, under the stress of having to shoot a gun under pressure. So I mean, one of the things you want to be able to do if you're concerned about being able to effectively defend yourself in this kind of use of force event is, well, when was the last time you fired that gun under any kind of stress? Whether it's training stress, whether it's competitive shooting stress. If all you do is shoot on a square range a couple times a year, which is more than most people who have guns do, frankly, unfortunately, how well do you actually think you're going to perform under this kind of pressure? Someone's threatening you with a gun from feet away, and now you're contemplating, all right, maybe should I take the shot or should I not take the shot? And of course, I saw the show you did on this earlier, and I agreed with everything you said. And one of the considerations, of course, is, you're in a community. There's homes there. There's wives, there's children, there's innocent people all around. Every one of your misses, bullets don't miss, right? They keep going until they hit something. It may not be what you intended to be hit, but they always hit something. They don't just disappear into the vapor. And while if you are acting in self-defense, firing rounds in lawful self-defense, and you hit an innocent person, there may not be criminal liability for that innocent person being hit. There are legal arguments to be made there, but you still have to sleep with that. You killed someone, you maimed somebody, you crippled somebody, you turned somebody into a vegetable that has to be taken care of for the rest of their lives because of your bullet that hit them, because you missed. So that's something that has to be taken into consideration.
Let me make one comment to that. There was a commenter on that YouTube video that identified himself as a retired police officer. He was trying to make sure we understood that he knew about use of force and that. And he said he was commenting about if my round hit a house or something. He said, in this situation, that's not my fault. It's the fault of the person that made me do it. And I understand his point, but it's like, but they did make me do this, but I still sent the round into that schoolyard or whatever. Of course, we always choose the school bus load of children or whatever, but it's, they maybe made me do it, but I still did it. Like I got to go to sleep at night and think about that. Like, is that, and he was pretty matter of fact about it. Maybe that's no different than deciding when I would pull the trigger. Like, maybe that's part of that equation. I must accept that if I fire a gun in violence, something else bad could happen. Thus, I accept that. But I just wanted to, share that with people, because I personally don't want that on my conscience.
And of course, you have to accept some risk. I mean, most of us, if we're going to get, heaven forbid, in a gunfight, it's probably not in the open ocean, right? Where it's impossible for someone to be downrange, right? Generally, it's going to be in some populated area. So there's always some risk. There's some risk that somebody's downrange that could be hit. But we ought to want to minimize that risk to as close to zero as possible, both because we don't want to hurt innocent people, and also, as you say, what's important now? What is the mission if you're in a gunfight? It's to neutralize that threat before they put a bullet in your noggin. It's not the person who shoots fast that wins the gunfight, right? It's the person who hits fast, gets effective hits fast. All those misses you're firing into that neighborhood, into those backyards, they're not doing anything to the guy who's trying to shoot you back. So even setting aside the altruistic reasons for not wanting misses, you ought to not want misses because you need hits to solve the problem.
True. I was just thinking about that. That would have been, for me, support hand shooting, most likely. I mean, I maybe could do this as the driver's seat, but it'd probably be offhand shooting, off to the side, facing this way, kind of moving in this axis. It's not hard shooting, but how often are people practicing shooting from a seated position? IDPA, people, if they don't know, you may get stages where you're sitting at a table or sitting in a seated position. And I've even seen some stages where there's a car door hung, people've got a door and you're shooting through the open car door. If you've never seen that, I think it's pretty easy to say it's not a hard shot until you find yourself, shit. I just was with some students a few weeks ago on the East Coast, and we're talking at lunch, and you probably see this thing you're talking about. I've heard you say some of the things you're saying. Your thought about there's not zero chance of, like, you say the stuff so much that to you it's like, like the old hat, and these guys are like awestruck with some of the drills that we're doing. And to me, it was just like, this is really boring. And not boring, but like whatever. And I go, well, what do you normally do? And, they're very basic. They put the bullseye target up on the side of a fence post or something, and they are firing, half a magazine, and then they go take a break, and they're just slow static fire. So to do anything other than that was like, and then you think about, okay, now you're going to go from this thing where you're completely isolated and controlled, standing static, to now you're sitting in a vehicle, heart's going, you got your woman next to you, barking in your ear, and you're all adrenalized.
That's the worst, man. Women get more guys killed by inserting themselves into arguments.
Hey, ladies, don't get upset. We're just having fun. But women do get guys killed.
Because I'm afraid of the trouble I could get you if I use that gun. And that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to scare people into not. I carry a gun. I've carried a gun every day of my adult life. I encourage people to responsibly carry guns for personal protection. A gun, again, I've carried a gun every day of my adult life. I've never even had to take that gun out of the holster once in all those decades of me carrying a gun. A gun is very rarely the answer to whatever problem you're facing. That said, if the gun is the answer, the gun is almost always the only answer that's going to solve that problem. So I think it's important, if you're responsible and capable, to carry a gun on your person if the law allows wherever you live. And if it doesn't, maybe you should consider moving.